In a small village in Tanzania, where the air smelled of rain and the drums sang every evening, there lived a young woman named Ebony. She was known throughout the land for her gentle spirit and bright heart. Ebony was not only beautiful on the outside, but her kindness shone through everything she did. When the children cried, she comforted them with soft songs. When the elders were sick, she stayed by their side with herbs, water, and quiet prayers. Everyone in the village loved her because she made people feel safe, warm, and happy. Ebony lived in a small hut near the edge of the forest. Her home was simple, made of red clay and palm leaves, but it was always clean and filled with laughter. Every morning, the first sound that came from her hut was her voice. She would sing as she swept her floor or fetched water from the stream. The birds often stopped to listen, and sometimes even the wind seemed to pause just to hear her. The children liked to gather around her when she sang. She told them stories of brave hunters, wise spirits, and kind queens who ruled with love instead of fear. Her days were full of work, yet she never complained. She would walk far into the forest to gather healing plants. The old women of the village said she had the hands of mercy. When someone was hurt or fevered, Ebony's gentle touch and calm words helped them heal faster than any medicine. Many said her kindness came from the spirits of her ancestors, who blessed her with a pure heart. But not far from the village, deep in the dark forest where the sun could barely touch the ground, there lived a witch named Mama Kunda. She was old and full of bitterness. Her skin was rough like bark, her hair tangled like dry vines, and her eyes glowed like embers in the night. Long ago, Mama Kunda had once been known as a healer too, but greed and jealousy had turned her heart dark. When people stopped visiting her and began going to Ebony for help, Mama Kunda grew angry. She would stand by her pot of charms, watching the smoke rise, and whisper, "Why do they love her more than me? Why do they praise her name and forget mine?" Her heart became heavy with envy. Each day, her hatred grew stronger, feeding on her loneliness. She would look into her mirror of bone and bark, seeing her wrinkled face, and spit at her reflection. "It is not fair," she hissed. "Her beauty makes them blind. They cannot see that I am stronger." One evening, as the sky turned red and the crickets began their song, Mama Kunda crept from her hut and walked toward the village. From behind the trees, she watched Ebony dancing with the children near the fire. The glow of the flames made Ebony's face shine softly, her smile warm and bright. The villagers laughed and clapped their hands as she sang. Mama Kunda's eyes burned with jealousy. She clenched her fists and whispered a promise to herself. "One day, that face will be mine," she said. Ebony did not know that she was being watched. Her heart was too pure to imagine anyone could wish her harm. That night, she helped an old man fix his roof before the rain came, and when she returned home, she sat outside under the moon. The stars shimmered above her like silver beads. She closed her eyes and thanked the spirits for another peaceful day. Her voice was soft and calm as she prayed. "Let my heart stay kind," she said. "Let me bring light to those who live in darkness." In the forest, Mama Kunda heard her words carried by the wind. They made her rage even more. "Light to those who live in darkness," she muttered angrily. "Then bring your light to me, if you can." She turned to her hut and began to prepare her spells. For many nights, she gathered strange things: ashes from burned roots, feathers from black birds, and drops of water collected during storms. She spoke to the spirits of the shadows and asked them for power. But the spirits warned her that envy has a price. Mama Kunda did not care. She only wanted what Ebony had. Days passed, and Ebony continued to live her simple life. She helped a mother deliver her child, she mended clothes for the poor, and she fed hungry travelers who passed through the village. People began to say that she was blessed by the ancestors. Her smile made the world seem brighter, and even the animals trusted her. When she walked near the forest, the monkeys did not hide, and the antelopes grazed without fear. But the forest itself had grown uneasy. The trees whispered at night, and the wind carried strange cries. Ebony sometimes felt a chill run through her bones, as if unseen eyes were following her. She would turn around quickly, but there was nothing, only shadows and the rustling of leaves. She told herself it was just her imagination. Yet, deep in her heart, she began to sense that something dark was moving closer. One afternoon, Ebony met a young hunter named Cato near the river. He was strong and kind, known for his honesty. He told her that strange things had been happening near the forest. "The animals are restless," he said. "Last night, I saw firelights moving between the trees. They looked like eyes." Ebony smiled gently and said, "The forest is alive, Cato. Sometimes it speaks in ways we do not understand." But inside, her heart trembled. She felt the world around her growing colder. That night, as the moon rose, Mama Kunda finished her spell. She stood before her pot, filled with dark smoke, and whispered Ebony's name over and over. Her voice echoed through the forest, carried by the wind, reaching all the way to Ebony's hut. Ebony stirred in her sleep, her dreams suddenly heavy and strange. She saw the face of an old woman covered in shadows, and she heard a whisper, "Your beauty is not yours anymore." The next morning, Ebony woke with a sense of unease. The birds did not sing outside her hut. The air felt thick and still. She looked into her small mirror made of polished metal and saw her reflection smiling back at her, but only for a moment. Then the image shimmered and vanished like mist. She gasped and dropped the mirror. Her heart pounded as she looked again, but all she saw was emptiness. She stepped outside, her breath trembling. The villagers greeted her as usual, but some paused and stared. One woman screamed softly and covered her mouth. The children hid behind their mothers. Ebony reached up to touch her face and felt only smooth skin. Her features were gone. No eyes, no lips, no nose. The world around her spun, and fear filled her heart. Far away, in her dark hut, Mama Kunda stood before her mirror and laughed. In its surface, she no longer saw her own wrinkled face. Instead, she saw the bright and beautiful face of Ebony staring back at her. She smiled, pleased with her work. "Now they will see me," she said. "Now they will love me." But deep inside the forest, the spirits of the land began to stir. The earth trembled softly, and the wind whispered through the baobab trees. The world had changed that night. A kind heart had been robbed, and a jealous one had taken what did not belong to her. And though Mama Kunda did not yet know it, her victory would not bring her joy. For the beauty she had stolen was born from goodness, and goodness cannot live in the heart of envy for long. That night, the village slept in silence, unaware of what had begun, a tale that would soon teach them all that beauty without kindness is a curse that cannot last. The night was heavy with rain. Dark clouds covered the moon, and thunder rolled across the hills like the growl of an angry beast. The people in the village of Ndalani stayed inside their huts, closing their doors and windows. But deep in the forest, in a small hut made of twisted branches, Mama Kunda was awake. The witch stood before her pot, stirring a thick black liquid that hissed and smoked. Her old face was lit by the red glow of fire, and her eyes shone with greed and madness. She whispered words that had not been spoken for many years, words that even the spirits feared. Her voice was rough, yet steady. "Spirits of night, hear me. Give me what I desire. Take from her the beauty that blinds the world. Let me wear it as my own." The wind howled through the cracks of her hut as if warning her to stop, but she did not listen. She threw strange things into the pot, a feather of an owl, ashes of burned herbs, a drop of her own blood. The fire rose higher. Lightning flashed, and for a moment, her shadow looked taller than the trees outside. She reached into the pot and pulled out a small clay mask, smooth and shining. "Her face," she whispered. "It will be mine." She blew her breath across the mask, and the magic began to spread through the forest, moving like smoke, winding its way through the rain and wind until it reached the quiet hut of Ebony. Ebony slept peacefully, her body tired from helping others all day. She dreamed of laughter, sunlight, and children dancing by the river. But her dream slowly changed. She saw a dark shape standing at the edge of the forest, whispering her name. "Ebony!" The voice was low and cold. In her dream, she tried to run, but her feet were heavy. The voice came closer, whispering again, "Ebony, give me your face." The wind outside her hut grew stronger. Her lamp flickered and went out. The clay jars on her shelves began to shake. Then a cold air brushed over her cheeks, soft at first, then sharp like knives. Ebony gasped in her sleep. The air around her shimmered, and a faint light glowed over her face, then vanished. The next morning, the storm was gone. The sun rose slowly over the red plains, lighting the wet roofs of the village. Birds began to sing again, and the air smelled of fresh earth. Ebony woke to the sound of roosters crowing. She stretched and smiled, feeling grateful for another day. But something felt strange. Her room seemed dim, even though the sun should have filled it with light. She rubbed her eyes, but the world looked hazy. She went to her small mirror, a polished piece of metal she used each morning. But when she looked into it, her smile froze. She blinked once, twice, her hands trembling. Her reflection was gone. The mirror showed only a blur of light. She leaned closer and touched her face, but what she felt made her drop the mirror in shock. Her skin was smooth, too smooth. There was no shape, no eyes, no lips, no nose. Her face was gone. Her heart began to pound. She stumbled backward, breathing hard. No, no, this cannot be. She ran outside, calling to her neighbor, a woman named Mosi. Mosi turned and screamed. "Spirits, save us!" she cried. People came out of their huts, drawn by the noise. They gasped and stepped back in horror. The children hid behind their mothers. One old man dropped his walking stick and whispered, "She has no face. The spirits have taken her." Ebony touched her face again, tears falling from where her eyes should have been. "It's me," she tried to say, but her voice cracked. Her words sounded strange, muffled, as if the air itself did not want to hear them. The villagers backed away, whispering prayers. Someone shouted, "She has been cursed." Another said, "She walked with the spirits." Ebony shook her head, her heart breaking. She reached out for help, but no one came near. Fear filled the village. The elders gathered quickly, lighting herbs and chanting to chase away the evil. They told Ebony to leave until the curse was lifted. "You bring darkness with you," one of them said. "Go to the forest. The spirits must judge you." Ebony begged them to believe her, but they turned their faces away. The people she had healed, the children she had cared for, all looked at her with fear. Tears streamed down her smooth cheeks. She ran toward the forest, her feet splashing through the wet mud, her heart heavy with pain. She did not stop until the village was far behind her. The trees closed around her, tall and dark, their branches whispering above her head. The forest was quiet except for the distant sound of dripping water. She fell to her knees and cried. "Why me?" she whispered. "What have I done?" Far away, in her dark hut, Mama Kunda laughed. She stood before her mirror, and the reflection that looked back at her was no longer her wrinkled, bitter face. It was Ebony's face, smooth, young, and beautiful. She touched her new skin and smiled. "At last," she said, "the world will love me again." She stepped outside and looked at the rising sun. Even the morning birds seemed to sing for her. She walked through the forest, feeling proud and powerful. But the forest spirits watched her. They saw what she had done, and they whispered among themselves. The wind carried their voices through the trees, soft but full of warning. "She has stolen what was pure," they said. "The balance has been broken." The ground beneath Mama Kunda's feet felt warm, almost alive. But she ignored it. She thought of nothing except her new face. Meanwhile, Ebony wandered deeper into the forest. She could not see clearly, but she could feel the world around her, the rough bark of trees, the cool air on her hands, the smell of wet soil. She walked until her legs trembled. She found a small stream and knelt beside it, hoping to see herself in the water. But when she looked down, she saw only ripples. Her face did not exist, even in her reflection. Her heart was full of sadness, but she still whispered a prayer. "Spirits, if I have done wrong, forgive me. Show me the truth." The wind blew softly through the trees, almost like a sigh. Somewhere far away, thunder rumbled again. In the village, strange things began to happen. The river that ran near the huts turned cloudy and cold. The animals refused to drink from it. The crops began to bend and wilt, even though the soil was still wet from the rain. The people grew afraid. They remembered Ebony's kindness and began to wonder if they had made a mistake. "Maybe we chased away our blessing," one woman said. But no one knew where Ebony had gone. Mama Kunda, now wearing Ebony's face, returned to the edge of the village. When people saw her, they gasped in surprise. "Ebony!" they shouted with joy. "You are safe." The witch smiled sweetly, pretending to be the kind young woman. She spoke softly, acting humble. "Yes, I am safe," she said. "The spirits have forgiven me." The villagers cheered and brought her food and gifts. They did not notice that her eyes were colder, that her smile did not reach her heart. As night fell again, the witch sat in Ebony's hut, looking at her reflection in a bowl of water. The face was beautiful, yes, but there was something strange. The reflection did not move when she did. She blinked, but the reflection stared back, unblinking. Her smile faded. For the first time, fear crept into her heart. She whispered to herself, "It is mine now. It belongs to me." But the reflection's lips moved without sound, forming words she could not hear. The morning sun rose over the village, painting the sky with gold and pink. Birds sang on the rooftops, and the smell of fresh rain still lingered in the air. People were busy starting their day when they saw a familiar figure walking down the dusty road. It was Ebony, or so they thought. Her face was bright, her skin smooth, her smile gentle. The villagers cried out with joy. "Ebony has returned. The spirits have forgiven her." They ran to greet her, bringing baskets of fruit and flowers. Children surrounded her, holding her hands. The elders bowed and blessed her. Mama Kunda, wearing Ebony's stolen face, stood in the middle of the crowd, smiling. Inside, she felt proud. She had fooled them all. No one saw the wicked heart behind that gentle face. No one knew the real Ebony was lost somewhere in the forest, alone and faceless. Mama Kunda moved through the village as if she had never been gone. She spoke softly, pretending to care for the people, just as Ebony had done. When a child cried, she knelt down and patted their head. When an old woman coughed, she brought her herbs, though she did not know how to use them properly. The villagers believed her kindness had returned, and for a short time, peace filled their hearts again. But something strange began to happen. When Mama Kunda spoke kind words, her smile looked stiff, like it was forced. When she tried to sing, her voice cracked, and the birds did not come near. At first, she thought it was because she needed rest. But at night, when she looked at her reflection in a bowl of water, her new face seemed different. The eyes looked dull, as if the light inside them had faded. Her lips twitched, and for a brief moment, the reflection smiled when she did not. Mama Kunda frowned and touched her cheek. "This face is mine now," she whispered. "It belongs to me." But her reflection did not answer. She turned away from the water, feeling a cold shiver run down her spine. The next morning, the villagers asked her to bless the crops. It was something Ebony always did at the beginning of each new week. Mama Kunda smiled and walked to the field, her dress bright in the sunlight. She raised her hands and said, "May the spirits bless this land with life and growth." Her voice sounded soft, but her heart held no love. As the people clapped, a dark wind moved through the fields. The flowers near her feet began to wilt. One woman gasped. "Look!" she cried. The petals of the sunflowers turned black and crumbled to dust. The villagers stepped back in shock. Mama Kunda froze. She forced a smile and said, "It is only the wind. The spirits test us." But deep down, fear began to grow in her chest. Later that day, a child came running to her with a small bird that had fallen from its nest. "Ebony, help it!" the boy cried. The witch took the bird gently in her hands and whispered, "You will live." But the moment her fingers touched its feathers, the bird stopped breathing. Its eyes turned gray, and a faint smell of smoke rose into the air. The boy screamed and ran away. Mama Kunda looked at her hands. A faint trace of ash clung to her skin. She wiped them quickly on her dress, but the dark mark did not go away. That night, she sat alone in her hut. The laughter of the villagers echoed outside, but she felt no joy. Her face still looked beautiful in the dim firelight, but she could see small cracks forming near her eyes. She rubbed them, but the cracks grew deeper. Her heart pounded. "No," she whispered. "I will not lose it." She reached for her mirror, the same mirror she had used for her spells. In its surface, she saw Ebony's face staring back at her, but something was wrong. The eyes in the reflection were crying. Tiny tears of gray ash rolled down the cheeks, though her real face felt dry. Mama Kunda screamed and dropped the mirror, shattering it into pieces. She fell to her knees, breathing hard. "It's mine," she shouted. It's mine. But the pieces of the mirror shimmered on the floor, and in each piece, Ebony's sad face looked back at her. Days passed, and the villagers began to notice more strange things. The river water turned darker. The animals that drank from it grew weak. Children fell ill without reason. They came to Ebony, or who they thought was Ebony, for help, but her herbs no longer worked. She mumbled words she didn't understand, pretending to be wise, but nothing she did helped. The people began to whisper. "Something is wrong," they said. "Her touch feels cold. Her eyes look empty." One night, Mama Kunda tried to sleep, but she couldn't. She tossed and turned, haunted by the sound of distant crying. At first, she thought it was the wind. Then she heard a voice whisper her name. "Mama Kunda." The voice was soft but clear. Her heart froze. She looked around her hut, but there was no one there. The voice came again, "You cannot keep what is not yours." She grabbed her blanket and covered her ears. "Leave me alone," she shouted. But the whisper grew louder. She ran outside into the night. The moon was full, and the air was cold. She fell to her knees near the well and looked down into the water. Her reflection stared back at her, only now it was not smiling. It looked sad, and its eyes were filled with ash. "Who are you?" she asked, trembling. The reflection spoke in a soft, broken voice. "You stole what you did not earn. You wear kindness, but your heart is cruel. You cannot hide forever." Then the reflection began to fade, and the water rippled as if something had touched it. Mama Kunda screamed and ran back to her hut. She shut the door and lit every lamp she had, but the light flickered weakly, struggling to stay alive. From that night on, everything she touched began to die. Her garden turned brown. The flowers in her hair crumbled to dust. Even the cats that came to her hut refused to stay. Her face, once bright and beautiful, began to lose its glow. The cracks spread, and small gray lines marked her skin. She covered them with oil and cloth, but nothing worked. Each time she lied, a tear of ash rolled down her cheek. The villagers started to fear her again. Some said she had brought a curse to the land. Others whispered that the spirits were angry with her. When she passed by, people turned their heads and made signs to protect themselves. She could feel their fear, and it filled her with anger. She went to the elders and shouted, "You doubt me? After all I have done?" Her voice echoed across the village, but the elders only looked at her with sadness. That night, lightning struck the sky again, just as it had on the night she cast her spell. Mama Kunda sat alone by the fire, her hands shaking. She looked at the broken pieces of her mirror scattered on the floor. In each shard, Ebony's face still looked back at her, calm, forgiving, but distant. The witch felt tears rising in her eyes, but when they fell, they were not water. They were ash. She touched her cheeks, feeling the roughness of the cracks. The beauty she had stolen was slipping away, like sand through her fingers. For the first time, she felt true fear, not of spirits or death, but of herself. She had become the very thing she hated, empty, hollow, and alone. Outside, the wind carried a faint voice from deep within the forest. It was soft and sorrowful, but full of strength. "You cannot keep what belongs to the light," it said. Mama Kunda trembled. She knew whose voice it was. It was Ebony's. Her hands shook, and the fire in her hut flickered weakly before dying out. The darkness swallowed her, and she sat there, weeping tears of ash into her hands. The forest was silent except for the sound of Ebony's bare feet brushing against the leaves. Days had passed since she had run away from the village. The sun no longer seemed to shine for her. She walked without knowing where she was going, guided only by the soft sound of wind and her hope that the spirits had not forgotten her. Her face was still gone, smooth like the surface of water, and though she could not cry in the way she once did, she could feel her heart breaking with every step. The deeper she went, the darker the forest became. The trees grew taller and older, their roots twisting like sleeping snakes across the ground. The air smelled of rain and earth. She could hear strange whispers in the wind, as if the trees were speaking to one another about her. Sometimes she thought she saw eyes watching her from the shadows, but when she turned, there was nothing. She was tired, hungry, and weak, but something inside her told her to keep walking. After what felt like many days, Ebony reached a clearing. In the center stood a great baobab tree, taller and wider than any she had ever seen. Its trunk was thick like a mountain, and its branches reached out like arms trying to touch the sky. The tree seemed alive, not just living, but aware. Its bark glowed faintly under the moonlight, and the air around it was calm, almost sacred. Ebony felt warmth spread through her body. She fell to her knees before the tree and whispered, "O Great Spirit, I am lost. I have been robbed of my face, my name, and my home. Please, help me." The forest grew very still. Even the crickets stopped singing. Then, from within the trunk of the baobab, a soft light began to shine. The roots trembled slightly, and the air filled with a deep hum, like a drumbeat echoing from the earth itself. Ebony lifted her head and gasped. A tall figure stepped out from the light. He was an old man, his skin as dark and smooth as the bark of the tree. His eyes glowed like golden embers, and his hair was white as ash. He carried a wooden staff carved with patterns of leaves and stars. "Do not be afraid, child," he said in a calm, deep voice. "I am Jabari, the spirit of the baobab, keeper of the old truths." Ebony bowed her head. "Spirit," she whispered, "I do not know what to do. A witch has stolen my face. The people I loved turned away from me. I have no home, no beauty, no name." Jabari looked at her for a long time. "You speak of what has been taken," he said, "but not of what remains. Tell me, Ebony, what still lives in you?" She thought for a moment, then said softly, "My heart still beats. I still wish to help others. Even now I do not hate her, the witch who hurt me." The spirit smiled gently. "Then you are richer than you know," he said. "True beauty does not fade, because it is born in the heart, not on the skin. What was stolen from you was only a shadow. Your light still burns." Ebony looked down. "But how can I live without a face? People fear me. Even the river does not show me my reflection." Jabari raised his staff, and a warm wind swirled around her. "The river shows only the surface," he said. "It cannot see the truth beneath. You seek your reflection in the wrong place." The leaves of the baobab rustled, and the spirit stepped closer. "The witch's curse binds your outer form, but her power cannot touch your soul. To reclaim what was taken, you must forgive her." Ebony's eyes widened. "Forgive her?" she asked. "She destroyed me. She took everything." "Yes," Jabari said, his voice soft but strong. "But if you let anger live inside you, her curse will remain. Forgiveness is not weakness, it is the key to freedom. When you forgive, you break the chain that ties your spirit to her darkness." Ebony was silent. She thought of Mama Kunda, her greedy eyes, her cruel laughter, her lies. The pain she felt was deep, but under that pain, there was something else, sorrow. She felt sorry for the witch who had lost her way. The spirit smiled again. "You are ready," he said. From his hand, a small light began to glow. It took shape and became a wooden mask, smooth and beautiful, carved from the heart of the baobab tree. Patterns of leaves and stars were drawn across it, just like those on Jabari's staff. "Take this mask," he said. "It carries the strength of the earth and the wisdom of forgiveness. Wear it not to hide your pain, but to carry your courage." Ebony reached out and held the mask in her hands. It was warm to the touch, as if it was alive. She lifted it to her face, and the moment it touched her skin, she felt something powerful flow through her, a wave of peace, warmth, and light. She felt her heart calm for the first time since the curse began. The forest glowed around her, and the air seemed to hum with life. Jabari placed his hand on her shoulder. "Your journey is not over," he said. "You must return to the world. The witch's heart is filled with darkness, but even she is not beyond redemption. Through your forgiveness, the balance will return." Ebony nodded slowly. "But what if she does not change?" The spirit smiled. "Then let her live with her own shadow. Forgiveness does not depend on her heart, only on yours." He lifted his staff again, and the roots of the baobab began to glow. The light grew brighter until Ebony had to close her eyes. When she opened them again, Jabari was gone. Only the great tree stood before her, silent and strong. But she could still hear his voice echoing in her heart. "Walk in light, child of kindness. What was lost will find you when you forgive. Ebony stood for a long time before the tree. She looked at the mask in her hands, then at her reflection in a small pool nearby. For the first time, she saw something, not her old face, but a faint glow of light where her features should have been. She smiled. "Thank you, Great Spirit," she whispered. She spent the night under the baobab, resting her tired body. In her dreams, she saw her village. She saw Mama Kunda sitting alone by the river, her stolen face cracking like dry clay. Ebony did not feel hatred. Instead, she felt pity. "She has lost her way," Ebony whispered in her dream. "But maybe she can still be saved." When morning came, the forest was bright and full of birdsong. The air smelled sweet, and the light filtered softly through the trees. Ebony tied the mask around her face and stood tall. She no longer felt afraid. She felt strong, steady, and filled with peace. The weight of sadness had lifted from her shoulders. She turned toward the path that led back to the village. Each step she took was filled with new purpose. The spirits seemed to watch over her, their whispers gentle and kind. The baobab's branches swayed in the wind, as if waving goodbye. As she walked away, a small flower bloomed at the base of the baobab tree, a flower that glowed faintly in the sunlight. It was a sign that the forest had forgiven too, and that light had begun to return to the world. Ebony's heart was calm. She knew the journey ahead would not be easy, but she was no longer afraid of the darkness. She had learned that true beauty lives in the heart, and that forgiveness was stronger than any curse. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that her face, her true face, would find its way back to her when the time was right. The sun was rising slowly over the hills when Ebony left the forest. The air was cool and soft, and the sound of birds filled the sky. She walked with calm steps, her wooden mask shining faintly in the golden light. The path back to the village was long, but her heart felt light. She was no longer afraid of what she might find. The spirit of the baobab had given her strength, and her heart was filled with peace. She knew what she needed to do. The trees whispered as she passed, and the wind seemed to guide her. Every step brought her closer to home, closer to the truth. When she reached the edge of the forest, she saw her village in the distance. Smoke rose gently from the huts, and she could hear the faint sound of children playing. For a moment, she stood still, her heart beating softly. The memories of her old life came back to her, the laughter, the songs, the kindness. And then she remembered the pain, the night she lost her face, the fear in the eyes of her people, and the witch who had taken everything from her. Ebony took a deep breath. "It is time," she whispered. She adjusted the mask on her face and began to walk toward the village. The people were not the same as before. The village looked tired. The fields were dry, the river darker than it used to be, and the air heavy with sorrow. When they saw Ebony walking down the road, they stopped and stared. Some whispered, "She has returned." Others hid behind their doors, afraid of what her return might mean. Her steps were steady, her voice calm. "I bring no harm," she said softly. "I have come to bring peace." But Ebony did not stop at the huts. Her feet carried her past the homes and toward the river. Something deep inside her told her that Mama Kunda was there. The path grew quiet, and the air turned cold. The sound of rushing water filled her ears. Then, by the edge of the river, she saw her. Mama Kunda sat on the muddy bank, her hands covering her face. Her clothes were torn, and her hair hung loose like dry vines. She looked smaller, weaker than before. The face she had stolen, Ebony's face, was cracking apart. Pieces of skin fell into the water, turning into dust. The reflection in the river showed two faces, one beautiful but breaking, the other hollow and empty. Mama Kunda rocked back and forth, crying softly. When she heard footsteps, she lifted her head. Her eyes widened when she saw Ebony. For a moment, she could not speak. Then her voice trembled. You came back." Ebony nodded. "I did," she said. "I came to end what began that night." Mama Kunda touched her face and whimpered. "It hurts," she said. "It burns. The beauty I took is dying, and I cannot stop it. I thought it would make me happy, but it made me hollow." Her cracked lips quivered. "Why does the curse not end?" Ebony stepped closer, the mask still covering her face. "Because it was never yours to keep," she said softly. You stole what belonged to love, not envy. The spirits do not bless greed. Mama Kunda lowered her head. I know, she whispered. Every night I see your eyes in the water. They weep for me, though I do not deserve it. I hear your voice in my dreams, asking me to change. But I was too proud. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be seen. The river flowed gently between them. The sound of the water mixed with the soft rustle of wind in the reeds. Ebony knelt beside her and placed a hand on the witch's trembling shoulder. I know what it is to want to be seen, she said. But beauty cannot be stolen. It must be grown from within. You looked for love in envy, but love only grows in kindness. Mama Kunda's eyes filled with tears. They rolled down her cracked cheeks like drops of ash. I am sorry, she whispered. I took your face, your life, your peace. I do not deserve forgiveness. Ebony looked at her quietly. Then she took off her mask. Her face beneath the mask glowed faintly, not yet whole but filled with light. Forgiveness is not something we deserve, she said. It is something we give. Mama Kunda stared at her, unable to speak. The glow from Ebony's face spread softly through the air. The water in the river shimmered, and the trees around them seemed to lean closer, listening. Ebony closed her eyes and said gently, I forgive you. The moment the words were spoken, a soft wind moved across the river. The air grew warm, and the light around them grew brighter. Mama Kunda gasped as the cracks on her stolen face began to widen. The false skin crumbled away like dry clay, falling into the water and turning to dust. Beneath it, her true face, old, tired, but human, appeared once more. The witch touched her cheeks in disbelief. It is gone, she whispered. The beauty, it's gone. Ebony smiled softly. It was never yours, she said. But you still have time to find your own light. Mama Kunda looked down at her reflection. For the first time in many years, she saw her real self, wrinkled, aged, but alive. She touched the water gently, watching her reflection ripple. I do not know if I can, she said. You can, Ebony said. If you learn to love, even a little, the world will forgive you too. Tears filled Mama Kunda's eyes. But as they fell, they were no longer gray like ash, they were clear like rain. She looked up at Ebony, her voice trembling. Your heart was stronger than my magic. The wind blew softly again, carrying her words away. The light around Ebony grew brighter, and suddenly her face began to change. The glow deepened, shaping into her true reflection. Her eyes, her lips, her smile, all returned, pure and bright. The curse had lifted. Mama Kunda gasped. Your face, it's back, she said weakly. Ebony nodded. Because I chose forgiveness, not hate. That is where true beauty lives. The witch smiled faintly, her strength fading. Her body shimmered like dust in the sunlight. Perhaps there is peace for me now, she whispered. There is, Ebony said softly. Go in peace. Mama Kunda's body grew lighter, turning into fine silver dust that drifted into the air. Her cloak fell to the ground, empty. Her voice faded with the wind. Your heart was stronger. The dust rose higher and disappeared into the morning sky. Ebony stood by the river, watching the light fade. The water was calm again, and her reflection smiled back at her, whole and bright. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly free. The pain in her heart was gone. She looked up at the sky and whispered, Thank you, Great Spirit. Thank you for teaching me what it means to forgive. The villagers, who had followed her quietly from a distance, saw what had happened. They fell to their knees, ashamed of how they had treated her. Ebony, they called, forgive us too. Ebony turned to them and smiled. There is nothing to forgive, she said. We all lose our way sometimes. What matters is that we find it again. The people wept with relief. They invited her back to the village, and together they began to rebuild what had been lost. The river ran clear again, the crops grew tall, and laughter returned to their days. At night, Ebony would sit under the stars and tell the story of the witch who stole her face. She did not tell it with anger but with hope, the hope that others would learn that envy destroys, but forgiveness heals. From that day, no one in the village forgot the lesson Ebony had taught, that true beauty lives in the heart, and that even the darkest soul can find peace when forgiveness takes its place. The end.